Yeah, well, I love that you brought up the chemicals because I mean, one of the main reasons why we can't sleep is from inflammation and stress and chemicals and toxins are a big part of that.
Ride.
Why can't I sleep? That's the question that's been on my mind on and off for several years. Sleep is essential to both our mental and physical health, and not getting enough sleep or good quality sleep can wreak havoc on our lives. I know that I'm not alone, whether it's hormones, stress, or something else. So many people are saying that sleep has become an issue for them. Being aware of the situation and talking about it is important as getting to the bottom of it. Joining me today is Martha Lewis, a sleep consultant and functional health coach for people who have tried all the things and still can't sleep. We chat about why we can't sleep, some of the things that are impacting our sleep, and what to do when you wake up in the middle of the night. Martha also mentions how journaling can be a great way to settle our minds. And my new journal, Your Journaling Journey, is a great way to get started. It's full of journaling prompts and it blends in gratitude, affirmations, and valuable tools. Not to mention over $200 in bonuses, including a free trial to Nectar, our online community. Search for Your Journaling Journey on Amazon. Now buckle up, it's time to get on with the show. This is the Roller Coaster Podcast. We are here to help you be empowered and renew your sense of purpose as a midlife mom. This is your time to redefine and reclaim your power as a woman. Just because our kids are getting older doesn't mean that our lives still don't have crazy twists, turns, ups and downs. And that's not to mention what our hormones are doing. We're navigating helping our kids plan their next chapters while quietly wondering, what the heck does my next chapter look like? My name is Lucy Q, wife, mom, podcaster, and journaling mentor. This is a crazy time in your life, but you are not alone. So I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Roller coaster. Life is like.
Welcome to the roller coaster, Martha.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today because it's about sleep, or rather, why we might not be sleeping. And while we all know, but probably don't know, how important sleep is to every function, whether we're talking about mental or physical, sleep is critical. But we don't really think about it until we're either not getting enough of it or what we're getting is just not that quality sleep. So I can't wait to learn the ins and outs from you and all of this. But first, Martha, I'm really curious. How did you become a sleep expert?
Well, probably not surprisingly, it came from my own struggles with sleep. For most of my life, I was a great sleeper, always loved my sleep. And then I got pregnant at age 39. And the last trimester, I did not sleep very well, which I figured was just hormones and there wasn't much I could do about it. But it continued even after my son was born, even after, and he was a horrible sleeper. So I ended up hiring a sleep consultant to help with his sleep. And so then he was sleeping through the night at age 6 months. And then I actually became a pediatric sleep consultant to help parents with their baby sleep. But the ironic thing is that I still wasn't sleeping. So yeah, this went on for 2 years before I finally figured it out. And for me, it looked like I would try to go to bed early because I was so exhausted and it would take me forever to fall asleep. And then I would wake up at 3 and 4 in the morning and not be able to go back to sleep until like
Oh, I
6.
call that the witching hour.
Totally. Yeah. Which was when my son was waking up for the day. So, once I had a baby, I couldn't make up for it by sleeping in like I used to be able to. So, yeah, so I was miserable. And at this point I was working a full-time job. I had started my business as a pediatric sleep consultant. I had a young baby and I was not sleeping and I was miserable and also felt like a fraud because here I am helping other people with their sleep and I'm not sleeping. So luckily I have a background in nutrition, so I've been in the health and wellness space for a long time. So I learned about this certification for doing functional lab testing. So, interpreting the test results, giving recommendations based on the results. And so I decided to go for it, hoping that it would help me. And it totally did. I did these tests. I found out I had a parasite that I probably had for 13 years since traveling in Asia. I had major hormone imbalance, which probably isn't surprising having a baby later in life and, all the stresses of pregnancy, childbirth, having a young baby. I had copper toxicity from being on birth control for a long time. I had food sensitivities. Like I had a lot going on. And so once I started correcting those things, then I started sleeping better. So now that's how I help my clients is doing this testing, finding out what's going on in their bodies that are keeping them from sleeping normally.
There are so many things in your story that I can relate to.
Yeah.
And I have so many thoughts and ideas buzzing around in my head because when we had our first baby, yeah, I was in my mid to late 20s, but he didn't sleep at all. We would maybe get 2 hours at a time. And for him, it was because he would eat constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly. Up until he was a year and a half, he was still waking up in the middle of the night and drinking like a full 9-ounce bottle.
I don't know.
Even now, dude just eats constantly and he's thin. I just don't understand it. But I mean, I can remember pre-kids. I'd go to bed at 9 o'clock at night and I'd wake up at 6. Fantastic. No problem. And then it was like, once you get into having kids, I think that's the beginning of when our hormones as women, they really start to get shaken up a bit. And then you sort of have, I had our second kid and that kind of threw another loop into it. Before you know it, you're into your early 40s. And what a lot of women don't realize is that's kind of the beginning of the, where you start sort of touching in that perimenopause phase and hormones are doing their own wacky thing behind the scenes. And you're not even aware of half of the shit that's going on. And, here I am, I'm 49 and I'm like, I don't know when was the last time that I went to sleep and stayed asleep for a good 8 hours without having, call it some sort of aid, because I'm here in Canada, so cannabis is legal.
Okay.
I've used different forms of CBD to help me sleep. I've used, in real desperation, sometimes I've used other things that are probably not the wisest to help me sleep. But I still don't feel rested.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, how do we get to the bottom of why can't I sleep?
Yeah.
And I know that's what other women are like, oh, hell yeah, I know what she's talking about.
I know it's so common. And I think people don't talk about it a lot until someone brings it up. And then like I was on a call yesterday with 4 other people for a podcast, actually for entrepreneurs, but all of them had sleep issues. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
I think for me, sleep and mental health are directly linked together because anybody knows if you're not getting much sleep, on my worst nights, I get 2 to 3 hours sleep. Within a couple of days of trying to cope on that, you become a mental basket case. You don't even process information in a sort of coherent way. You can't put 2 thoughts together. Add to that hormones and all this other stuff. It's like, no wonder some of us are a hot mess.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it definitely affects our mood. And I hate it when I hear people tell me that their doctor says, oh, it's your anxiety that's causing your sleep issues and it's all in your head and all of that. And I'm like, usually the sleep issue, like the not sleeping is what's leading to feeling anxious or depressed. Or yeah, or if people have had those issues for a long time, then the same imbalances that are causing their sleep issues can also be causing their mental health problems. So I just think a lot of it is physical more than we realize.
And, when it comes to that nutrition side of things, I mean, let's face it, there are a hell of a lot of chemicals that we have building up in our bodies. And, we compare it to things have gotten, I don't even know, I'm going to say more chemically, but I don't even think that's a word. But chemicals have become more of an issue in our lives compared to, say, when we were kids. Because certainly when we were kids, we didn't have as much packaged food.
Right.
Something at like eating out for many of us was a treat rather than, a daily staple. So I think, for a lot of reasons, women in midlife, our bodies are getting to a point where they're going, ooh, enough with the chemicals. We're adding the hormones. Plus, I mean, world events is just enough just to make anyone lose sleep.
Yeah. Right.
But there's just so much crammed into that. So where do we even start? Where can anybody listening, what can be sort of their first few steps to, they may not be sleeping perfectly, but at least start getting better rest and getting on that right path of quality sleep?
Yeah, well, I love that you brought up the chemicals because I mean, one of the main reasons why we can't sleep is from inflammation and stress, and chemicals and toxins are a big part of that. So, yeah, I think, one of the first things I recommend for people is going on an anti-inflammatory diet. So, that's going to mean avoiding those processed foods, especially, but also, a lot of people don't have healthy guts. And so they're reacting to gluten and dairy and they don't even realize it. Refined sugar and alcohol are really inflammatory. So I'm like, if you have sleep issues, health issues, then eliminating those foods for a period of time can really help. And then also minimizing toxins, like we talked about, we're exposed to all these environmental toxins. So we can't ever get away with them completely. And I do think that a healthy body can deal with a certain amount of toxins, but what we can do to reduce them is definitely, by avoiding processed foods, that's going to go a long ways, eating organic to avoid those pesticides, using more natural personal care products and cleaning products, like those things can be really toxic. So there are things you can do like that just with the products you're buying that can make a really big difference in lowering your toxic load. So that's where I would definitely say to start for anyone.
And I don't think women are fully aware of how many chemicals are in the basic products that we're using every day.
Yeah.
Some of it can be trickier to get around. I've tried to use natural deodorants, just doesn't work on me. It's not. So that one is not a good option for me. Another one, yeah, call it somewhat vain. I'm not ready to go gray, so I am going to keep coloring my hair. But I have become almost hyper aware of all of the other products and the chemicals that are in them. And can you maybe there's probably the same way that there's sort of a dirty dozen when it comes to produce that you want to, if you're going to buy organic, buy organic. Is there sort of a dirty dozen of chemicals that we should be looking for that our labels say, does not contain, some of these things?
Yeah, I mean, some of the worst are sodium lauryl sulfate, parabens, phthalates. So a lot of more natural products were, say, like paraben free, phthalate free, things like that. I mean, a great resource is the same organization that does the Dirty Dozen, the Environmental Working Group is what they're called. They also rate products for cleaning, for skincare, for cosmetics. So that their website is ewg.org. And so you can find all of their resources on there. So you can literally type in, what you're using, and they'll rate it as to, you know, whether it's safer, or, what chemicals might be in there. So that's a great resource to use for sure.
That was not one I was aware of. So that one,
Yeah.
although I might go down a rabbit hole, just
Right.
researching everything.
Totally.
One thing that I do tend to look for on labels um, is whether they're one for me, because I'm just an animal lover. I look to see if it's bunny approved, just
Hmm.
so it's not tested on animals. And a lot of the time, I'm kind of guessing if it's bunny approved, then the company is a little bit more aware of
Right.
certain things. Another good indication from what I've learned is if it's, is it true that if it's a certified B Corp, where they're looking at, the company itself is looking at being, what's the right term? Not more environmental, but sort of better practices, that
Yeah.
you would kind of think that their products are more, you
Yeah.
know, beneficial for the users rather than, using the good old harsh chemicals that we grew up using.
Yeah. Yeah. I think B Corp too is a lot for like how they're treating the employees, and the environment and things like that. So yeah, I think that's great to support those companies.
Yeah, and you know, yeah, it does cost more, and
Hmm.
in the world that we're living in, everything's costing more. But I also find that some of these products are better made, like they're better lasting, so
Yeah.
you don't need like goops of it. So that's just kind of one of the things that I've focused on a lot lately, is just where can I reduce those chemicals, and cleaning products is another one. I mean, I don't know how often you spray out that tub with something and you can barely breathe. That's not a good sign. You should not
Yeah.
be using those products. So there
Exactly.
are there are little things, and I've also found that the cost of natural cleaning products has come down greatly. They are more widely available, and the price is much more affordable than, say 10 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. And there are recipes out there for using good old, you know, white vinegar and
Oh
baking
yeah,
soda.
vinegar is a good one.
Yeah, and things like that are really inexpensive, that actually work really well. So, yeah, I mean, it's easier now than it has been in the past to find these good products and to find them more affordable, like you're saying. But I also think, like, yes, you might spend a little bit more right now, but if that's going to keep you from having health issues in the long run, I mean, it's going to save a lot of money in the long run.
And that's definitely something in midlife that we have to consider, is, those little tweaks that we can make to our life, that's going to make the next few decades more enjoyable.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I don't want to spend my 60s, 70s, 80s, with aches and pains and sitting in a rocking chair. I want to be able to get up and live life. And I think
Right.
that comes down to those decisions that we're making today.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I do want to add that a lot of those chemicals, especially in these products, are endocrine disruptors. So that means they're affecting our hormones. So it's part of the reason why we have such issues with menopause and even, menstrual issues and things like that these days, because there are all these chemicals that are totally affecting our hormones.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I've heard a lot of people saying lately, this isn't your mother's menopause. And in some way, I thought, well, is that just some way that we're trying to make our menopause more important than what our mothers went through? But that whole chemical thing, it's like, hey, wait a second. Most definitely, women today are dealing with a much heavier burden on our systems
Hmm.
than, what our mothers would have gone through 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that menopause was as, um, I don't know what the word is. I want to say crazy or whatever, but as it used to be, like it's just harder to deal with now. There's people have so many symptoms, and it's like this real struggle for years. And it didn't used to be like that for our mothers, grandmothers, and definitely, before that, it wasn't as big of a deal.
No, and that's the thing is that, my mom sort of said, well, we just got on with it. And I'm like, well, what you were dealing with then is completely different than what we're dealing with now. And there's actually a book out. Cannot remember the name of it, but the author actually goes through why midlife right now is so tough on Gen X. They're like, basically, you guys are the forgotten generation. You always have been. And guess what? It's the same in midlife. And they sort of go through everything that we've been through. And it's not until you sort of stop and you look at it in that context that you're like, how are we still walking?
Yeah, right.
You're like, you sort of read it and you think, holy shit. you know? So after we look at, the chemicals in our food and sort of reducing the packaged food that we're eating, and we start looking at, the chemicals that we're using in our day-to-day products, what next are some of the things that we should be looking at?
Well, definitely, I would say liver health is really important to focus on because all these toxins put this extra burden on our liver. And a lot of times our liver can't handle it anymore and it becomes overburdened or congested. So yeah, so if you've been, dealing with all these toxins and your liver is going to need some support. So that can be through, there are lots of supplements out there with herbs and things that help support the liver. Doing things like taking an Epsom salt bath helps to draw out toxins, and that's going to reduce that burden on your liver. Doing things like having, warm water with a fresh squeeze of lemon juice first thing in the morning, kind of gets your liver going, helps it produce bile, which is going to help us digest food. And then toxins are actually excreted through the body, using bile. So that's really important. And same with like having bitters or something bitter before meals to stimulate that digestion, stimulate that production of bile is also going to help. So yeah, so giving your liver some love is definitely what I would recommend next.
I have two questions about those tips.
Yeah.
The lemon, when you drink the warm water in the lemon, does it have to be like fresh squeezed lemon, or can you use the lemon that comes in a bottle?
I would think you would want fresh squeeze because I think there are other ingredients that are in that lemon that comes in a
Good
bottle
point. Good
that
point.
probably aren't that great. Yeah. Plus you're getting, yeah, I think fresh is always best, but you're also getting some vitamin C with the lemon juice, and yeah.
And
But technically, like anything bitter is going to stimulate that. So
yeah, that was my next question. You said bitters
yeah.
before dinner. What's bitters?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with bitters that are used to make certain cocktails,
Oh,
so
the
it's
one that
kind of,
comes in the brown bottle with the extra
yeah,
big white label that is, I can't
yeah,
pronounce.
right. Yeah, exactly. Starts with an A. So I
That
don't mean
one.
that exactly, but that is a bitter, right?
Okay.
So sometimes people will put bitters in club soda to help with nausea. Um, and really traditionally people used to eat or drink something bitter before eating. So if you think about eating a salad first, a lot of times those would be bitter greens. Or if you think about like aperitif cocktails, like I think about Italian Campari and soda, or
Gotcha.
their Negroni, like that Campari is really bitter, and that's supposed to start stimulating digestion and stimulating your appetite. So that's why they're called an aperitif. So traditionally, like people would, eat these bitters with meals that helps with digestion. So now you can buy bitters, from the health food store. Mainly, I don't know if they're in regular grocery stores, but you just kind of spray a couple sprays in your mouth and before eating, that's going to help with digestion and liver function.
Okay. Interesting. So my next question is, what I call that witching hour, when you wake up, whether it's like 1
Mm-hmm.
until 3 or 2, and that really awkward time that you're awake.
Mm-hmm.
What should you do and what should you not do when that happens?
Yes. So, from a, yeah. So I recommend, I mean, of course, we want to find out why that's happening because there are reasons why that's happening. But in the moment, I recommend actually getting out of bed.
Oh, really?
Yes. So you don't want to look at a clock necessarily because that's probably going to cause anxiety, right? Either, oh, I've only slept this much, or I only have this many more
Or your
hours.
countdown. I have to get up in 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually recommend not looking at a clock. But if you think you've been lying there for 10 or 20 minutes, then getting out of bed. And you want to go somewhere where you want to keep the lights dim. So you don't want to be on the TV. You don't want to be scrolling on your phone because that blue light is not going to help. That's going to suppress melatonin and wake you up pretty much. So you want to go do something relaxing. For me, I would always read, but you could stretch, you could listen to a meditation, you could do a crossword puzzle. If something's on your mind, I actually recommend like journaling and kind of getting that out onto paper. And then once you feel sleepy again, then go back to bed. And if it's been another 10 or 20 minutes, then get up again. And do something relaxing till you feel sleepy and then go back to bed again. And the reason we want to do this is because you want your brain to have this association that bed equals sleep. And for people who struggle to sleep, like bed has become this place where you lie around getting anxious that you aren't sleeping. So yeah, so that's another reason why you don't want to be watching TV in bed or working in bed, or you want your bed to be a place for sleep. And so the first few nights it can be really hard if you're getting up and down, and it can take a few nights to a week to where your brain gets it. Okay, when I'm in bed, I'm sleeping. And so I found, and many of my clients have found, that you actually end up getting more sleep that way because you get tired sooner and you're able to go back to sleep faster than if you're just lying there tossing and turning for hours.
One thing that I've been doing, and it could be a really bad thing, I don't know, but I started listening to books or documentaries. Like I'll tuck my phone away so that I don't see the light, but I'm listening to it. And I don't know if it's a bad thing because then I realize that I end up dreaming about what I'm hearing. So
Gotcha.
I don't know if that actually impacts the quality of my sleep or not.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. I mean, does it stay on while you're continuing to
Yeah.
sleep? Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So how do we know, first of all, how do we know how much sleep we need and how much, and if we're actually getting good quality sleep?
Yeah. I mean, I think it all depends on how you feel the next day. If you feel rested, you're getting enough sleep. You're getting good quality sleep. And if you aren't, then you aren't.
Okay.
Like
I'm
you can,
definitely
yeah. I mean, like, people want to track their sleep and be like, I'm only spending this much time in deep sleep and blah, blah, blah. And I think like even tracking that can cause a lot of stress as well. So sometimes I just think it's really important to tune into your body and how it feels.
Yeah, I used to track my sleep with, I think it was a Fitbit at the time. It would tell me how much quality sleep I got. And then I realized that was just messing me up more. So I
Yeah.
stopped. I'm like,
Right.
no, I don't need you to tell me if I feel like crap or not.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if I feel great and I only got 5 hours sleep, let's just leave it at
Right.
that.
Exactly. Yes, I agree.
Now, as we wrap up, do you have any final tips, words of wisdom for people that are looking at improving their sleep?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is that I want people to know is that if you can't sleep, this isn't something that you have to live with. Like there is a reason why. We can find out what that is and work on correcting it. And so this isn't something that you have to live with forever or even for 10 years of menopause or whatever it is.
There are solutions.
Yes, exactly.
And Martha, where is the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is thecompletesleepsolution.com. And I also have a podcast called The Insomnia Fix.
Ooh, alrighty. Now, as Martha mentioned earlier, a great way to get the thoughts out of your head And to work through some of those challenges that we may have building up in our minds, a great tool is journaling. And I have a guided journal that's now available. It's called Your Journaling Journey. It's a 90-day guided journal with prompts, and it blends in gratitude and affirmations. I've also included some great tools, not to mention over $200 in bonuses, which also includes a free trial to our online community, Nectar. You can search for Your Journaling Journey on Amazon. Check out the show notes for links, and also check out the show notes to connect with Martha. And Martha, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Super fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.